Wonderful. Well, it's June 22nd, time for our June State Board of Education board meeting, and it's 9:02. And with that, Executive Director Ross, will you do the roll call?
President Haley,
Here.
Vice President Hagerman,
Here.
Superintendent Horn, Member Catanese. Member Catanese will be joining us. I think he's logging on momentarily. Dr. Clay,
Here.
Dr. Cruz Rivera,
Here.
Member Kravickas is not with us today. Member Haney,
Here.
President Haley, you have a quorum.
Great. So with that, I'd like to do a couple notes on the president's report. First of all, I just want to commend the state board staff and the Department of Education staff working alongside the Auditor General's report. Many of their findings and/or criticisms of the state board and the department are things that we've actually been working on for the last several years, specifically recognition that open meeting laws were not being maintained. There was a period of time when our technical advisory committees were meeting under the leadership of the department. We took that back over in 2023 and are in compliance with open meeting laws. A couple other things related to A through F. I joined the board in 2022, and a number of us have had questions about the A through F letter grade system and how the calculation works and its compliance with putting in place indicator scoring. And so I just want to commend all of us that we worked with the Auditor General's office. We are taking steps before they even issued the report or began the report toward clarifying the A through F. And I believe hopefully by this fall, maybe by the end of the year, we will have sort of an updated A through F letter grade system. For those that are interested, you can go back and look at our 6 different study sessions that the board has had. We've directed and will vote today the TACs to provide some additional guidance, which we will take into consideration later this year. I also want to commend Jessica for your hard work in putting together the educator discipline report. We have 381 disciplines in 2025. That's not necessarily an indicator of a growing number of disciplines, but I think the hard work of our investigative unit and the PPACs to make sure that when there are disciplinary actions or issues that are filed or we notify through the various mechanisms that they are being worked through, they're being processed, and there's resolution. So just want to commend you all. I also want to note, and it will be highlighted in the report later today, that we take educator discipline at the state board unbelievably seriously. And when a complaint is made, it is investigated, it is looked through, and information is gathered and steps are taken. So it is not something that we take lightly. We believe that our students need to be safe, and we need to make sure that the adults that are there that have the privilege of educating our kids are done so appropriately. So I just want to say thank you. And last but not least, Rico, great job with the ledge. We look forward to your update later today on everything from ballot referrals related to education to last minute policies that were included in the budget. So and my last comment, I also want to say thank you to the department, as you all have been providing us with detailed information on the Mauer plans. I think we're having a vote on our last one for the 25-26 school year, nothing like after the school year. I appreciate the inclusion of information of whether or not the curricula that they are using are aligned with our K-3 literacy requirements and the K-5 endorsement. I also appreciate that as we consider the approval of educator preparation programs, it is really important that our schools of education understand that they have to include the science of reading and are really making sure that the next generation of educators are steeped in that science and that they are prepared to teach our kids. It's required, affected by the four-year institutions in 2026 and by all of our educators by 2028 to have a K through 5 literacy endorsement. So thank you for doing that. It has been something that I've asked for a long time, and I'm glad that it's included in the materials. So with that, Superintendent Horn, your report.
I was also going to comment on the response to the auditor report. The auditor filed two separate reports, one on the department, one on the board, on the board. And but we filed a combined response or rebuttal actually. And the staff of the department and the staff of the board worked very well together. So I want to express my appreciation to the staff of the board for doing that.
And with that, Executive Director Ross, the best part of the meeting.
President Haley, Superintendent Horn, members of the board. This is indeed the best part of the meeting. As you know, we honor some students of the month at every single one of our meetings. We have so many amazing kids across this state. Every month, I think, well, surely this child won't top the last one. And every month, I'm just amazed and really thankful for all the great work that happens across our state by teachers and schools and great kids and families. We have 3 kids today, and there's a special reason for that. June is a very difficult month to get kids to be able to come in to be recognized, as you can imagine. Particularly some of the kids who are students of the month are off doing amazing things. So I'm going to talk about 2 of those kids today who aren't with us, and then we have 1 student who's with us virtually. So we have William Miller is not with us today, but he just finished 6th grade at Colonel Smith Middle School in Cochise County, Dr. Clay. He was nominated by his teacher, Emily Post. He's unavailable because he's at Scout Camp, which speaks to his leadership and his involvement in the community. He's just embodies the school's Panther pride. He's involved in their community. He works concessions at student council sporting events. He jumps into the school mascot suit to energize the crowds at games. He's active in Scouting America, participates in Groove Lab lessons, plays the saxophone, and then plans to join the Civil Air Patrol, and has served as the junior vice president and vice president of student council. So though he's not with us today, I would love if we could give William a hand for being an amazing kid. We have a second student who was unable to be with us today, but also from Cochise County. So Dr. Clay, you guys are killing it out there. So Michaela Jones is a recent graduate from Tombstone High School. She was nominated by Daniel Kilpatrick, her teacher. She's unavailable for the best reason. She's on a family cruise. So just, that's great. She was active in junior ROTC, serving as a battalion command sergeant major, Raider team command, and mounted color guard team commander. The Tombstone High School junior ROTC is the only high school mounted color guard in the country, and Michaela has served as their commander since her sophomore year. So that's really impressive. The team has competed throughout Arizona, California, Colorado, Texas. On top of all that, she maintains a 4.15 GPA and is a member of National Honor Society. So again, can't be with us, but let's give Michaela a round of applause. Now, I do want to say, though those 2 students couldn't be with us, they are in, let's just say, the best county in the state, and Dr. Clay. And so Dr. Clay has very kindly agreed. We're going to send the awards to her. She's going to honor those kids when they're back home. So they'll still be honored. They'll still be recognized by Dr. Clay. So we're very excited about that. With us today, virtually, and we're very excited that she is because she's somewhere pretty cool, is Annika Paleth. Annika is a recent graduate from Sonoran Science High School, Sonoran Science Academy in Tucson. She was nominated by her principal, Joshua DeWeer. He said she's an exceptional student, leader, and innovator with a 4.0 GPA. She's a valedictorian, National Honor Society president, and a College Board National Recognition awardee. She's won first place in several science competitions, was a nominee for Arizona's Future Innovator of the Year, participated in the Keys internship at the Biosymbiotic Sensor Lab, and has volunteered for several years with Tucson Meet Yourself and Ronald McDonald House, is involved in numerous student organizations, is fluent in 4 languages, and is joining us, and this part is so exciting, from the National Engineering Design Competition in Maryland. So Annika, take it away.
Thank you so much. First, good morning. My name is Annika, and I have just graduated from Sonoran Science Academy, Tucson. This fall, I'll attend the University of Arizona to pursue engineering with intended pathways in biomedical engineering or computer science and engineering. One of the things I love most about my school is its strong STEM community and opportunities it provides for hands-on learning and leadership. Through programs like STEM Council, Student Council Robotics, HOSA, National Honor Society, and Mesa U of A, the Congressional Award Program, and SARSEF and AZSEF, I've been able to explore my interests, challenge myself, and grow alongside my peers who share my passion for innovation. Throughout high school, I've worked hard to pursue excellence and meaningful impact. I've graduated as the valedictorian of my class, and the research I've conducted, which found the bioaccessibility of iron in Moringa oleifera leaf extracts for iron deficiency anemia, earned first place. My team won first place overall in Mesa U of A for the 2nd year, and we qualified for nationals in the National Engineering Design Competition, where we're developing a smart irrigation system called AquaWhisper that saves water by delivering perfect amount of water for each plant dependent on its species and environmental conditions. I've also earned the Congressional Award Silver Medal for 200 hours of community service. What has helped me grow most as a student is the support and challenge of the communities that I've been a part of. My teachers, my mentors, and teammates, and the STEM programs that pushed me to think critically and lead me with purpose. These experiences strengthened my confidence, curiosity, and commitment to use engineering to make a positive impact. Looking ahead, I'll be attending the University of Arizona to study engineering. My goal is to complete both my bachelor's and master's in 4 to 4.5 years through an accelerated program. Ultimately, I hope to build a career dedicated to human-centered engineering, creating accessible technologies that addresses health inequities, sustainability challenges, and community needs. Thank you for this award and recognizing the work that has shaped my journey. I'm grateful for the support of my teachers, mentors, families, and school communities. This recognition motivates me to continue growing as a leader, researcher, engineering, and committed to service and innovation. Thank you.
Do we take a photo with the screen in the back?
Okay, Shannon
Okay,
took some photos.
Very good. Well, gosh, well, thank you so much, Annika. We are grateful for you, and we wish you all the best as you pursue your academic endeavors and great success this summer. We hope you do very, very well this summer in your competition. Thank you.
Thank you.
President Haley, Superintendent Horn, members of the board. Just one quick note before I wrap up. Great kiddos come from great teachers, and our own Jason Katniss, who's an amazing teacher, was recently recognized by Arizona Family for his incredible work with Camp Katniss that helps send hundreds of students, empower hundreds of students to see themselves as college students and matriculate to college every year. So though I know he didn't know we were going to recognize him, I want to give Member Katniss a hand because he's just amazing. And that concludes my executive director's report.
Awesome. So with that, we'll move on to item 2. This is the call to the public. This is an opportunity for the public to comment on items listed in the consent agenda or the general session. Members of the public may also address topics not on today's agenda. Please note that Arizona law prohibits board members from discussing or take legal action on matters raised during the call to the public that are not on the current meeting agenda. Each speaker has 2 minutes to address the board during the 1-hour public comment period. Furthermore, speakers are not allowed to cede their time to another speaker, and personal attacks are not appropriate. And with that, Deputy Director Duplanty, have we received any requests to speak?
President Haley, Superintendent Horn, members of the board. Yes, we have. First up is Beth Hatcher, followed by Cameo Pete, followed by Ernest Rose. Beth?
Good morning. President Haley, Superintendent Horn, members of the board. My name is Beth Hatcher, and I've appeared before you many times representing the Council for Native American Ministry under the Episcopal Diocese of Arizona. I'm also a retired 3rd and 4th grade teacher. We are asking that you call a committee for the purpose of reviewing and modifying the Arizona history and social science standards to include the following. Explicitly name the doctrine of discovery so that it will be taught. Give the subject Native American genocide the same importance as is given the Holocaust. Insert the word forced where Native American migration is used, and include Indigenous Peoples Day, particularly since Columbus Day is named as a holiday. I will focus on the doctrine of discovery. Last month, a Native student was recognized during your board meeting. I spoke with him in the parking lot and asked if he'd ever heard of the doctrine of discovery. He had not. It's not in the standards. This past weekend, the U.S. Open golf tournament took place at the Shinnecock Country Club in the Hamptons. In response to that tournament, Susan Barton penned an article in People's World which said the following: New York State and the town of Southampton are employing an over 500-year-old legal and religious concept called the doctrine of discovery that has been used for centuries to justify Christian colonial conquest, unquote. The doctrine of discovery is not just a historical series of Catholic writings. Its principles are alive and well to this day. Just as the Constitution is a living document, so is the doctrine of discovery. Our request is not political, but one of asking for the complete and honest story to be taught. I end with a quote from the standards, quote, "It is vital for students to study both United States and world history so that they can analyze the human experience through time, recognize the relationship of events and people, and interpret significant patterns, themes, ideas, and turning points in American and world history. Students apply the lessons of history to their lives as citizens of the United States and members of the world community," unquote. Thank you.
President Haley, Superintendent Horn, members of the board. Next up is Pete Cameo, followed by Ernest Rose. Sorry, Cameo Pete, followed by Ernest Rose. Cameo.
Good morning, board members. My name is Cameo Pete. I am the Interim Director of Business Services for Ganado Unified School District. Thank you for the time for hearing my remarks regarding consent agenda item P, consideration to determine compliance with USFR for school districts as reported by Arizona Auditor General and the return of previously withheld state funds. 2 years ago, representatives from our district appeared before this board after the Auditor General determined that Ganado was not in compliance with the USFR. At that time, we asked for one thing: please don't withhold too much. And that was pretty much heard. We did have 3% withheld over the past 2 years. So we did work to address those identified concerns. Today, I'm here respectfully requesting that the funds previously withheld from our district be returned in full. As a small district located on the Navajo Nation, we face many of the same challenges experienced by school districts throughout Arizona, including declining enrollment, reduced funding from state and federal areas. We also face unique challenges associated with our rural location, including recruitment and retention difficulties, aging facilities, and infrastructure issues. Despite those obstacles, our staff and leadership teams have worked diligently to improve outcomes for our students and strengthen our district operations. The result of those efforts are evident. Schools that were once rated as C schools have improved to B letter grades across our district. We are maintaining those gains with potential for some of our schools to achieve an A within the next year or two. Our district has also received recognition at the state level, including the Golden Bell Award for collaboration from Arizona School Boards Association this year. At the same time, we have continued to improve compliance practices and work towards resolving any audit findings we find at every level of the organization. Meaningful and lastful improvement requires time, commitment, and effort from our entire team, and we remain dedicated to that work. Thank you.
President Haley, Superintendent Horn, members of the board. Next up is Ernest Rose. Ernest?
All right. Good morning, President and members of the Arizona State Board of Education. My name is Ernest Rose, and I serve as Superintendent of Wilson Elementary School District Number 7. I appreciate the opportunity to address consent agenda item O, regarding the district's noncompliance with the Uniform System of Financial Records and its corrective action plan. Wilson acknowledges the seriousness of the deficiencies identified by Arizona's Auditor General. We accept responsibility for strengthening our financial procedures, documentation, internal controls, and oversight practices. We are not here to minimize the findings. We are here to assure the board that Wilson is taking deliberate and sustained action to correct them. The district has restructured its finance department and engaged Dear Education to provide experienced financial leadership and guide the implementation of improved accounting practices. We are reviewing each deficiency individually, establishing written procedures, assigning responsible personnel, strengthening supervisory reviews, and retaining documentation that demonstrate compliance. Wilson is also meeting regularly with representatives from the Auditor General's office. These monthly meetings allow us to review our progress, receive guidance, identify outstanding requirements, and continuously monitor the implementation of our corrective action plan. We are committed to maintaining this collaboration until every deficiency has been appropriately addressed and verified. Although our financial processes require improvement, Wilson Elementary School District Number 7 remains financially solvent and has continued to operate within its legal authorized budget. The district's commitment to fiscal responsibility and the responsible use of public resources has not changed. We respectfully ask the board to consider the corrective action plan already underway and allow Wilson to continue working with the Auditor General's office.
Thank you so much.
President Haley, Superintendent Horn, members of the board, that concludes this call to the public.
Well, thank you. With that, we'll now move to item 3, the consent agenda. Is there an item or items from the consent agenda that a board member would like to pull and discuss? Okay, seeing that there are none, do I have a motion to approve items 3A through 3S?
So move.
Superintendent Horn makes a motion. Do I have a second? Member Catanese seconds. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Okay, now we'll move on to item 4, and this is the general session. And so with this, this is item 4A, Executive Director Ross.
President Haley, Superintendent Horn, members of the board. Today's presentation is an update on the school safety grant and some funding that became available for that grant. With us today is Sid Bailey, who's the Associate Superintendent from Arizona Department of Education, who oversees that work. Sid?
Board Member Haley, President Haley, rather, Superintendent Horn and School Board, thank you for having me this morning. As the Associate Superintendent, I've got the pleasure of and I don't have this working for some reason. Okay. I have the pleasure of overseeing and supporting school safety is one of the units that I do. And I know that you are typically used to having Mike Kurtenbach report as my deputy associate. He's disappointed he can't be here today because what we're bringing is what we believe to be very good news to you. But he's out of state on professional business today and couldn't be here, so I stand in his stead. I still don't have a PowerPoint, but just to remind you that the school safety program, and I believe you have this in your packet, growth from 2018 through 2025 is remarkable. We've gone from $12 million to over $128 million program, and have added multiple resource officers, school resource officers, counselors, and social workers to the program over the last 3 years. Last year, Mike came to you, or I'm sorry, last meeting, Mike came to you and had described a concern that we had that we don't have enough money to presently to take care of all the requests that have come in. But I'm here to inform you that under the leadership and direction of Superintendent Horn, we have in fact committed all the carryover money to that program. And as such, we are able to fund not only the 3-year cohort that has already been established of funds, but we also have enough money to take care of all first position award requests for this coming year, for 1 year only. So all first response requests, that totals over $53 million worth of requests. We've got enough carryover to take care of that. And as I said, because of the direction of Superintendent Horn, we intend to do just that. If we can get the approval of this board to release the carryover funds to award LEAs for the school safety program, we would like to do that as early as my staff tells me they're ready to send those letters out and let the LEAs know today, if not tomorrow at the latest. You can see this was the recommendation that we had, that Mike had brought to you last month. There was a waiting list. That waiting list has been taken care of with the carryover funds, and we can honor all requests, first position requests on that waiting list. Again, my only caution is that this is 1 year's worth of funds, and then we're tapped out. So without relief somewhere from state legislature or other entities, we will no longer be able to sustain those requests.
Sid, just to clarify, the board approved the release of funds at last month's meeting. That was for awardees for a 3-year cohort.
That's correct.
Yeah, today's vote would be for awardees for a 1-year cohort. So just to clarify that, because this typically is a 3-year grant. So your approval last month was those awardees for 3. This would be for 1.
Do we have any questions from members of the board? Dr. Clay.
Good morning, President Haley, members of the board. I just have a question, just for clarification. I know that last meeting, the issue was those schools who had already had contracts, and they were under the impression that those contracts would be approved. And then Mike had explained to us that, there was a system, a point system. I think each one of them, they got 2 points, which still didn't bring them to a point where they would be selected over everyone else. So my concern right now is those schools that were denied the funding because of the point system, but at one time it would say that these schools would kind of like be grandfathered in or grandfathered over. What about those schools right there? For example, if a school had 7 positions, and from last month, maybe 5 of them were filled, but 2 of them weren't because of the point system, because of the points. But at one time they said that all 7 would have been. Does that include those schools also? Because I'm seeing it says all first response requests. What about those other requests that were there prior?
President Haley, Superintendent Horn, and member Dr. Clay, and board members, it is my understanding that we have the criteria really isn't an issue anymore for selection, because all requests for first position will be taken care of. So we don't even have to follow that criteria anymore, as long as it was a first request moving forward. Is there anything else I need to add to that, Amanda, I have some staff members here that are a little bit more familiar with the process. Am I good with that?
Yeah, everyone has a
first
position.
Yeah, sorry. If you're going to speak, you have to speak in the microphone. Thank you.
Good morning. That's correct. All first position requests would be funded. The scoring rubric is used to decide those 3 years that were approved last month. Then all first position requests remaining would be funded through these carryover funds. Thank you.
Okay, so my question again, you're saying you said first position requests, those are ones that they've never requested before, and this is their first time. Is that correct? Just to clarify.
It's based on how the LEAs prioritized their requests. So if, say, for example, a site requested school counselor, social worker as a second position requests aren't being considered at this time due to the budget restraints. So it's really based on how the LEA prioritized their request.
Okay, I just don't understand the first, what is it called? First position. What is it again?
First position requests.
Okay, so give me what is a first position request? What is that? Because because it's just not jiving with me right now, and it's probably me and not you, but I'm just concerned. So those requests that were denied for the 3-year, they're not considered at all anymore. So that's where I'm my disconnect in my head is.
So first position, second position, each LEA has the opportunity to apply for 2 positions.
Mhm.
So they could apply for 2 school counselors, social workers, or 2 officers, or one of each, however they decided. First, not necessarily meaning their first time requesting, but just
Okay.
priority 1, priority 2.
Okay. I think I understand. So if I have a school that had 7 in the beginning that they were approved last year,
Mhm.
and this year only 5 of the 7 were. Those 2 that were missing, were they considered this time around?
It would really depend on how the LEA requested. So if they requested all 7 of those positions, and it would have to be through, it would have to be separate schools because
Mhm.
each school can only request up to 2.
Okay.
But as long as all 7 of those were their first position request, they would all 7 be funded for the 1 year, fiscal year 27.
Okay, thank you, because I'm going to tell you why I'm asking this. It's not just for my edification, I promise you. Last month I had at least 20 people come and talk to me, and half of them were constituents. All right. I want to be able to explain to them how this was done after this meeting, because I know people are watching and they're going to want to know. And my biggest thing is we need to break things down. We need to square root them to there's nothing but 0, that everybody across the board understands what happened, what's going on, and why, so that we don't get a lot of perceptions. And then we're in the aftermath of trying to figure that out. So that's why a lot of times you hear me, I'm asking questions constantly to clarify what you're trying to tell the public, so that they'll understand it, and they're getting it from, I call it, the horse's mouth instead of mine. So thank you very much. I think I understand.
Yeah.
I'm going to go ahead and
Yeah.
talk with some schools afterwards.
Let me just say, President Haley, Superintendent Horn, Dr. Clay, and members, that if there's any confusion at all I recommend that they contact the school safety unit, because they'll be responsive immediately to let them know what their situation is and why that's the situation that they have at their school. But the good news is we didn't think we were going to be able to take care of $53 million worth of requests, because there has not been any money come to us. But because of the carryover funds since 2018 at the direction of Superintendent Horn, we're going to fill every one of those requests for a year. And then it's up to somebody to come up with some more money so we can continue to provide the safety that our schools request and need.
Okay, so I'm going to say many thanks to Mike because we had a lot of conversation last month, and many thanks to Superintendent Horn for understanding that this affected a lot of people and this was extremely important. So I do appreciate all the hard work that was done behind the scenes. Thank you.
We'll go with Superintendent Horn, then Member Katniss.
Yeah, I just want to explain the somebody that Sid refers to as the legislature, and the governor would have to not veto. So the last meeting, we thought we only had enough money from the legislature to fund a portion of the first request, and that we had to turn down some first requests. We've been able to use carry forward money to fund all first position requests, and then for 1 year. And so next year, we need to make a full court press with the legislature for additional funding. We actually asked the legislature for more funding than we got this year. So we would have been able to fulfill all requests, but we didn't get that money from the legislature. So with use of carry forward money, we were at least able to fulfill all first position requests. And that's a choice that each district makes. Is there priority police officers or is there priority mental health professionals? So the priorities are all being filled under our proposal. And then next year, we welcome all the help we can get from schools and people here and anyone else we could think of to talk with the legislators and tell them we need additional money, even to maintain what we did this year. And hopefully, we'd like to be able to fund all first and second position requests.
If I might add to that, it is very balanced. If you look at the numbers of the total funding requests between school safety officers and healthcare professionals, it's almost a 50-50 split right down the middle. So there, whatever the first request is what we're going to honor.
Member Katniss, you had your hand up.
Yes. Thank you, President Haley. Hi, everyone. This is wonderful news. I know that this is great for our kids. This is great for our schools. I know that so many different schools and districts are going to be so excited that they're able to fund these counselors, these very important positions of need. I also want to say thank you to the department, to Superintendent Horn, to everyone from your team that helped make this possible for all these schools. I think that I speak for all of us when we say in today's world, it is so important for kids to be able to have access to mental health resources, to professionals that will help kids through very difficult times, for professionals that help keep our students safe. And so my question is really centered around the future. And I know that you said that this is a one-time thing. And my question really does stem around how can we, as a community, really let the legislature know that this is something that really cannot be a one-time thing. This is something that really needs to be able to get more funding because, one of the reasons why we need more funding is our state continues to grow, our student population continues to grow. And so how do we ensure that all students in the state are going to be able to access these really critical resources, not just for this 1 year, but for future years? So whatever we can do, I guess I'm looking for advice of how we can support you, how we can support this cause.
That's a good question. Member Katniss, is that a question for Superintendent Horn or for Sid Bailey, or both?
I think it's for both of you, and then also maybe even a question for Executive Director Ross as well. But how can we all rally to help? And even anyone that's listening, anyone that's also here that can also help, because it really does take a village in education to make sure that we are getting our kids all of our critical resources.
Okay. Yes, everybody lives in a district that has 2 representatives and 1 senator. And they want the votes of the people who live there. So if you call to make an appointment with your 2 representatives and a senator, they will meet with you and they will listen to you. And if they hear it from enough people, it will affect their decision making. And I say that as somebody who spent 4 years in the legislature.
Do you want to comment as well, Sid?
No, I'll leave the politics to Superintendent Horn. He's very capable.
Sounds good. I do have a brief question. I don't know if we have any other questions from members. Then I just looking at the, there were about 53 individuals or institutions that were on the wait list for funding. How was that calculated? Was it just based on the rubric score that you all determined? I noticed that there were some year 1 or 1 year funding that had similar scores as the others. So I'm just curious how that was decided.
Sure. Yeah, President Haley, Superintendent Horn, board members. The rubric really is moot at this point because all 53 of those were all 53 first position requests, and they will all be honored if this board gives us the direction today to do so. And they'll be notified no later than tomorrow that those positions for 1 year have been filled.
President
Just,
Haley.
I guess, just according to the document, the wait list recommendation that we received, we had the full list of institutions, their counties, their scores, and then the first position request. And then there are about 50 some that are waitlisted. So I guess I was just questioning, like, how were those waitlisted versus the other?
Well,
Are they, because it's according to this form, it is a wait list or first position request. So I guess I was just questioning how that was determined.
Yes, President Haley, Superintendent Horn, and board members, if you take the wait list that was presented to you last month, not knowing that we had funds available, and because of the direction of Superintendent Horn, we have taken all our carryover funds, and that there's enough carryover funds to take care of the $46 million first year fund request that you see in the second block and the almost $7 million on the wait list. So there is no more wait list for those first positions. That combined is a little over $53 million, and we have enough funds to take care of every one of those first position requests next year. So there's no more wait list.
Superintendent or Executive Director Ross.
President Haley, Superintendent Horn, members of the board. Mike Kurtenbach from the school safety team had submitted the documents to us, I think last week, maybe the week before. And then we were notified this morning of what Associate Superintendent Bailey presented, which was there was enough funding to cover that wait list. So there actually is no wait list now.
Okay.
All schools who made a request, that first request has been filled. The schools that were approved last month have been approved for 3 years. The schools that you potentially will approve today, which is every school that made a first request that wasn't approved last month, will be approved for 1 year. So no more wait.
So just so I'm clear, so we have a report that we received from you all. It was the funded 1 year cohort, and that was 363 positions at $46.2 million. Then we had a wait list group of 53 positions at $6.8 million. So collectively, we're now at approximately 53 million that will be funded next year. I guess that's
Yeah.
where I was
Yes.
confused because this, I guess,
Yeah.
has not yet been updated, the report that we received.
Yes, ma'am.
So wonderful. Now we're on the same page.
Yep.
Thank
As long
you.
as you guys approve us to move forward today, we're going to take care of them today or tomorrow at the latest.
Fantastic. That's great. We did hear written comment from a number of institutions, so I understand the urgency. So any other questions from members of the board or comments? Dr. Cruz Rivera or Dr. Clay? Sorry, my vision's a little. Dr. Clay?
I just wanted to say thank you so much for the clarification. The last couple of minutes of this cleared out a lot of things. I appreciate that, and I think the community appreciates that too. Thank you. And thank you for what you've done. Can't forget that.
Awesome. Well, with that, I'd like to take a motion that the board approve the release of carryover funds to be awarded to LEAs for the FY 2027 one-year cohort and the release of newly allocated funds to the FY 2027 one-year cohort waitlist as presented. Do
So
I have a
moved.
motion? Dr. Clay, do I have a second?
Second.
Member Haney, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Great. We motion carries. It sounds like you said you have a lot of calling to do. Okay, well, I'll now move on to item 4B, Executive Director Ross. This is an information only session.
President Haley, Superintendent Horn, members of the board. As you all know, the board voted back in February to approve the scope of work for the request for proposals for statewide assessments for English language arts, math, and science. As a reminder to the board and to those watching, the current assessments, those contracts expire in June of 27. So any newly adopted assessments would go into effect in spring of 28. So we very purposely started this process early so that we would have a rather long runway for the work, also in case there were any sort of hiccups along the way. But because it's been a few months, we thought it would be great to have the department come to update the board and the field. So with us today is Bethany Spangenberg, who's the Deputy Associate Superintendent of Assessment. Bethany?
All right, thank you. Good morning, President Haley, Superintendent Horn, members of the board. All right, as Executive Director Ross explained, I will give you some updates on our assessments because it has been a little while. So to review the process of the RFP process. So my team creates a draft. We bring that draft to the board for approval or any revisions that we need to make. Finalizing all of those documents that are going to be posted, and then it does go to the state procurement office for approval and any necessary revisions from them. It's posted for 30 days, and then there's a committee that will conduct evaluations. The committee recommendation will be presented to the state board for approval, and then it also needs to go to review by the Joint Budget Legislative Committee. So just kind of looking at where we're at in that process, we have drafted the RFP. It has been approved by the state board. So right now we're preparing everything to post that RFP, and then we'll start conducting those evaluations after the 30 days. So we do intend that that is going to happen yet this summer. And then we'll bring that back to you for review and approval, and then the Joint Budget Legislative Committee review around that time as well. So I know it's been a few months since I came and presented and had the approval for the RFP, but there were some delays, obviously, because we are in June now. So one of them was the HB 2032, which wanted to make sure if that was going to pass at the time when we were drafting, that we updated the RFP to include our requirements, our new requirements, so that our potential vendors could prepare their bids accordingly. We have had a lot of other state assessment contracts that we've been working through, and those contracts ended sooner. So we wanted to make sure that those went out so that we had plenty of time to implement all of our statewide assessment contracts. But part of what happened then with the state procurement office approval, this is a newer process for the department, and having all of these assessments come through kind of relatively at the same time does tend to create a little bit of a bottleneck, making sure those are moving forward. And that is not something that the Department of Education has a lot of control over. We're working with external people for that part of the process.
Bethany, sorry, before you move on, President Haley, Superintendent Horn, members of the board, just a quick refresher, House Bill 2032 was from Representative Fink. This was a bill that changed the assessment windows for when the assessments are delivered, moving them a little bit later in the year, and then updating some reporting requirements. So just, that's that bill.
Thank you. All right, so moving forward then, if we are able to award a contract to a vendor later this summer, early fall, we would end up having a kickoff meeting anytime after that with the vendor and under the new contract to start planning, creating that communication plan that could be as early as this winter. But because this does apply to the spring 2028 administration, there is plenty of time to make sure everybody's set up after the 2027 administration. So we will begin working as soon as we are able. And we do have a lot of time to make sure that we can complete all of the activities that we need to complete before we need to implement the 2028 administration. All right, so just kind of some context. There's a lot of things that go into assessment work, and there's a reason why we wanted to do this process as early as possible, and also making sure that we're continuing to do that work and that we are prepared. So even with a little bit of flexibility in our schedule, there's a lot of things that happen, but we still have plenty of time to do that. So the team is very, very busy all year round. Lots of different types of activities. So we do item development for AASA, AZSI. We own these items, so we make sure that we look at them, that our educators look at them. We field test them, making sure that they're appropriate for students. We create all of the supplemental documentation that goes with assessment. So administration manuals, user guides, accessibility manuals, lots of different things to make sure that our educators are prepared for testing. We create the test form. So there's a process that we go through to make sure that we are meeting the blueprint, that the psychometric data that we get from those items is matching what we would expect and what we need on the assessment. Platform management, making sure that our schools that open and close, and we have to make sure that our assessment systems are able to put those schools in and the students that are associated with those. And of course, students move throughout the year, so there's a lot of management, making sure students are in the system in the right place so that they can test, and making sure that they have the accommodations that they need available to them. And then during test administration, you can imagine it's a very, very busy time for us. We get probably over 100 emails a day just asking general questions. Sometimes it's an issue that came up. Sometimes it's just, hey, I'm not sure how to do this, or can you clarify something for me? So making sure that we're supporting all of our educators when they have students in front of them testing. Before reporting, we do a lot of quality control, validations, corrections applications to make sure that the test records are accurate and then they are matched to the correct student. And then after we do the field testing, the team reviews the data to make sure those items are performing correctly. And we also bring in educators to look at those with us and kind of give us some suggestions on if we need to make some adjustments to those field tested items that are not counted toward the student's score. Aspire's a little bit different. This assessment is only administered in Arizona now. It's not supported by ACT anymore. So there's a lot of facilitation, but most of the communication and the website and resources is going through the vendor that is supporting us with that. So a lot of the same or similar activities that we do to make sure that that assessment is implemented and the reporting is accurate. And then of course, ACT, which is a little bit less, that's more of that off-the-shelf type model that we use. Lots of communication with the field, with the vendor, and supporting that administration, making sure that schools and students are prepared, ready for testing, and have everything that they need.
Sorry, Bethany. President Haley, Superintendent Horn, members of the board. Just a quick reminder regarding ACT. There is statute that says the high school assessment for math and ELA must be a nationally recognized college entrance exam. So just that context is important.
Thank you. So although we have a little bit of a delay in the RFP process that we can account for that, all of this work that will happen after the contract is awarded, we still have lots of time to do these activities. For ASA and AZSI, we have materials, things ready and available for us. And then for the high school, it will be something that is a nationally recognized high school assessment. So there will be some support on that end as far as not having to create anything from the beginning. All right, and then just briefly, HB 2032 was signed earlier this month, and it does impact those testing windows and reporting for our assessments in grades 3 through 8. So it does not count the alternate assessment, but right now it would be ASA and AZSI. I think the slide might be a little bit outdated. We have had some preliminary conversations and working with the vendor to make sure things are moving forward. So I don't have any details about that I can share right now, but we are planning that implementation for 2027. Any questions?
Great. Thank you so much for that update. I know members were really curious. Do we have members from the board either here and present or those that are joining us virtually? I don't think so. Am I missing? My vision is like the eyes are blurry today. Okay. Well, thank you so much for that update, and glad that you're already taking into consideration the update on the testing. That was something that was in our materials of when students should be tested. So we look forward to future updates from you and as we move this process along.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, now moving to item 3C. Executive Director Ross, this is another information-only session.
President Haley, Superintendent Horn, members of the board. As you all know, the board oversees educator discipline for the state, has purview over educators, not schools or districts. That's an important distinction. Each year for the past, I think, 9 years, the board has compiled an annual educator discipline report to look at aggregate data and trends. And with us today to present that report, the author of that report is Jessica Mueller from our team. And I just want to echo President Haley's shout out from her president's report and thank Jessica for her excellent work in all spaces, but especially in this space. Jessica?
Okay, thank you so much, President Haley, Superintendent Horn, and members of the board. As Executive Director Ross mentioned, this is an annual process. We reflect often whether this should be fiscal year or calendar year. We're still continuing with it being a calendar year report where we update from the previous January to December the cases that have been adjudicated by the board. So it's worth mentioning that the overwhelming majority of Arizona educators serve students professionally and ethically every day. The board's educator discipline system exists to reflect the relatively small number of cases involving educator misconduct, while protecting students, upholding professional standards, and ensuring a fair and consistent discipline process. This is 98.4% of the workforce never is involved in a board adjudicated a disciplinary action. And so those members of the workforce are, serving the students in their schools professionally every day. So I'll give a quick overview of the process as a reminder of what it looks like to investigate these cases. And so every case complaint that is received by the board's investigative unit through a statement of allegations or other complaints that might come in, for example, through DPS, through a fingerprint clearance card situation, or from another jurisdiction. These get investigated, and the timeline will vary based on the nature of the allegations. And the goal is to determine the facts of the case and whether disciplinary action is going to be warranted. The Auditors General provides an important role in this with an independent review of the cases. And so it's not just the board staff that's involved in this process. We also have the Attorney General reviewing cases that are coming through that have been recommended that disciplinary action is warranted. They'll run that review as well. And so, but depending on the nature of the case, there'll be various actions that are taken. It could be that the case is of a nature where it's warranted to offer a negotiated settlement agreement. And so these cases are, they would offer the educator does not need to take the agreement. They could proceed another path. But this would, remedy the discipline and take the action more quickly when that's pursued. There's also a surrender form that's often offered, and those are for the more serious allegations where a negotiated settlement agreement would not be appropriate. And then we have the cases that go to the Professional Practices Advisory Committee, which is served by members of the public that are volunteering many, many hours of their time and their professionalism to, review the findings of the facts, conclusions of law, and make disciplinary recommendations to the board. Those recommendations are reviewed by you, and you do not necessarily need to adopt them. Sometimes you might remand them back to the PPAC like we've seen before. I just want to represent that there is a lot that goes on in this process, and we've expanded our staff over time to remedy that and really implement it with more fairness over time for the educators as well through the process. Okay. So this is a review of kind of where we've been recently, because there's been a lot of changes in the statutory authority that's been provided to the board. So in 2021, that authority expanded to non-certificated persons that are really the individuals who might be more one-on-one with a student, like a paraprofessional in a classroom or somebody who's providing a little bit more of that. They might be independent, so not necessarily a bus driver or those roles that might be around the student. In 2024, this expanded even more, and more authority was provided to the non-certificated persons. It also we received more funding for investigators and the staff that are supporting these cases. In 2025, at the end of the year, you approved a rulemaking package that it really updated and improved the efficiency of our processes in this space. So thank you for engaging in that process and providing your comments and feedback on it so that that could be updated. So all of this is just leading to, we have increased capacity, and what we're seeing through the PPAC, through investigators, through the Attorney General's office. And this is leading to, in one of my other slides, get to here, that the adjudication is, the time that it takes to adjudicate a case is dropping. So even though we expanded in 2021, we had to review our processes and we had some inefficiencies that were identified. And in 2024, it dropped to now the average case is taking about 10 months to adjudicate. We can split this data out for you depending on the type of case you're interested in, because it's going to take less time for a surrender or an NSA to come before you. It's going to take a little bit more time for some of those PPAC cases. So that would be useful to know if that is some context that you would like to know. We provide it to our investigators as well so they can understand at their own level what that's looking like too. Okay, so I already went over that the report is a calendar year updated report. In this report, we cut out 2012 to 2015 because frankly, our process has changed so much. The way that we oversee cases has changed so much. So we updated that to just a 10-year review of 2016 to 2025. As President Haley mentioned, we have 381 cases that were taken on disciplinary action by the board in calendar year 2025. This is an increase over even what we expect, and I expect that in 2026 it's probably going to be in the 400s as well. And this, as it's important to mention, does not reflect necessarily that there are more instances of educator misconduct happening in the classroom or in schools or even outside of the schools. It's that we have non-certificated persons coming under the purview of the board. It's that we're working through that backlog. You can see the timeline is reducing, and increasing the reports from school officials are coming in more often as well. So last year is the first time that reports from schools represented 50% of the sources of these complaints received by the investigative unit. And this continued in the trend of 2025 as well. This is really, we implemented a lot of mandatory reporting training in 2023, 24, and 25, and we're seeing this really have a positive impact and with the schools and charters. Okay. So as I mentioned, it's the first year that is reflecting these stronger reporting practices. And the ongoing investments that the board's enforcement action staff, particularly Garnet Burns, is making in this space to provide training and support to schools. On category of misconduct, this is a trend that we saw change a lot in the last few years. These types of misconduct, sexual assault, substance use, fraudulent offenses, and breaches of contract don't necessarily always happen on campus. It's very important to remember that. These could be things that are happening off campus, not happening with a minor at all. And so I do want to highlight that aspect of it. But it is surprising that we see assault cases have increased over time, and this trend is holding. That kind of went up in 24, and we see going up in 25 as well. And then with the certificate type, this is the first year where you'll see non-certificated educators over there at 78 of the 381 cases were non-certificated persons. This is a very different trend than what we saw in 24, and that's because these cases are moving forward to action by the board. And so I would anticipate seeing this continue as well going forward. As I said before, those don't necessarily always represent something that happened with a student on campus. It could be something that's happening outside of their profession, but it's still very important that we uphold those professional standards for schools. The other thing is that we continue to see, and you'll see in the larger report, that substitute emergency teaching subject matter expert and career and technical educator certificate holders are represented more frequently in disciplinary actions than some of the other workforce populations like elementary certificates, administrative certificates. And so it provides an opportunity for us to connect a little bit more about what it looks like to possess that certificate. What does the training look like for those types of certificates? So in the field, 76% of educators are female and 24% are male. And then the enforcement actions reflect a slightly different pattern where 60% of cases are involving a male personnel and then 40% are involving a female personnel. And this fluctuates up and down quite a bit year over year. And we don't see any discernible trends about the type of cases over time either. Suspension and surrender remain the most common types of disciplinary action imposed by the board. And I think you all recognize that as what you're seeing, that the NSA category and the surrender categories can be quite long. The revocations are a little bit more infrequent and typically reflect more extreme offenses that are typically going through the PPAC and getting that recommendation of a revocation. Some of the recommendations for the state legislature and to the education community is just, we really, really do rely very heavily on our case management system to improve the processing of these cases and to even improve the ability for school officials to look up the discipline of an educator. Having that system in place, it's helping support the community to ensure that the educator is able to serve in the classroom and to serve in a ethical and moral way as well. And, having more outreach with professional associations, organizations, if there's an opportunity that members of the community know that they would like to request our support, please reach out, because we can try to facilitate that, try to teach you how to facilitate that. And, maybe we can develop this sort of train the trainer model for the things that are relevant to educator discipline, as well as with our educator preparation programs as well too. So looking ahead, you might see a very different report next year. It's more of an interactive data dashboard, because there's so many questions that we get where it's like, okay, we see that female educators, might be involved more in discipline this year, but why is that happening? So we want to be able to drill down and make connections to what's happening and be able to tell a little bit more of a story with these cases. And as I said before, we can dive deeper into the data about why some cases are processing quickly, why some aren't, and we can, work with county superintendents and other educational partners to bring them this information if it's important, which we know it's important to them to review. And then we have our resources for educators page, which continues to expand. I'm always impressed at how much more is available there. And they're often they're free resources for individuals, and they could incorporate that into the professional development for school districts and charter schools as well. So are there any questions at this time?
I'm sure there are going to be. Waiting to see if we see any hands up. Any? I would just like to say thanks so much for Dr. Clay. I'll call on you in a second. I was waiting for you to raise your hand. I just thank you so much for this update, Jessica. I know it's been a topic of great concern, and there's, we read about accounts in the media, and there's a question of what is the process. So I appreciate you taking the time to review this and go through one topic, I think, and I know that Dr. Clay, not to steal her thunder, there's been quite a bit of conversation of could you use the county superintendents and get the information out. I know that Garnett and Dave have done a lot of briefings, but could you just walk through a little bit of how we do educate school districts on the reporting requirements? That might be really helpful, just to reiterate again, the process that you all take to make sure that our school districts have the information they need.
Bruce, I see Deputy
Or Bruce.
Planty is very
Deputy Director.
President Haley, Superintendent Horn, members of the board, great question. The leadership of the Enforcement Actions and Investigative Unit typically do some really do annual conferences, including the ASPA, which is the HR directors of the state, and they have a annual fall conference and a spring conference. They're usually either keynotes or speakers and doing multiple sessions. They also, at request, have gone out to LEAs and trained from just district leadership all the way through even educators and district leadership in sessions. Ed Preps have invited them. I know they did an online, and I believe it was recorded at GCU, and talking to not only Ed Prep staff, but also future educators. And so they really make themselves available kind of upon request. We have to balance our staffing capacity with this request. We don't have staff for like to just go out and train. But they do make themselves available, as well as they also attend, to stay in the loop nationally. They attend the NASDAQ, which is the National Association of Directors of Certification, that has an Ed Prep, has a PPI, a professional practices arm with ethics. And so they present and also bring that information back to Arizona and do share in their presentations. And as well as we also forward educators and school districts to our resources page and utilize that. We utilize that in a couple different ways, both when an educator has questions or has had an incident, we forward them there, but also we make sure that our HR partners, our district leadership, our school leadership folks are aware that this information is there. And I'll also say that we are in process of developing some other resources. We've kind of looked at some staff capacity and plan on maybe doing some mini like videos or little webinars, as well as updating one-pagers. Got some in the hopper from last year, maybe even focusing on site admin versus district admin. Those are kind of different job responsibilities and deal with ethics and educator misconduct in different ways.
Great. Dr. Clay.
Thank you, Jessica, for that really informative, thought-provoking presentation. What I wanted to say was that the clarification of why we have so many more people who are being disciplined is due to the the people who don't have certificates. I cannot even say that word. Those employees who do not have certificates, now we have oversight of those people. And sometimes we forget to tell people that. And I just wanted to comment on the usability and understandability of this presentation. I always say, please, when you present things, make it so that my mother could understand it. Okay, that she's not asking me a lot of questions. This presentation was one of those where there was a lot of understanding. I'm going to, as far as that website that you just showed, I look at it to the resources for educators. I'm going to suggest to my peers that we place that on all our county websites. I believe our enemy, as far as education is concerned right now, is misinformation and perceptions. And we have to purposely try to get as much information out about what this educational ecosystem is about and how amazing this ecosystem is and what we all do. So I just wanted to, again, say that, Jessica, I'm impressed by your presentation, and Sean, by your whole staff, about how they are deliberately clarifying things so that there's not a lot of questions. I really, really appreciate that. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Clay. I would echo that. I'm so impressed with the investigative unit and enforcement actions policy staff as well every day. Like I said, they expand this all the time with this resources for educators. Mm-hmm.
Member Haney.
Thank you, Jessica, for that. Echoing what Dr. Clay and others have said, this great report and some great information for what is a very important topic. I have a question, and I hope there's an answer for it. This is clearly a very serious issue that this board is charged with addressing. And I look at the numbers and gratefully that the numbers that are there is a very, very small percentage overall of the number of individuals that are involved in education in the state. That's to be commended, certainly. But those who are victims of misconduct, it still impacts them in a great way, significant way. And so I'm wondering if there is a way. I'm looking forward to next year's report where you said that there's an interactive component, and maybe we can do some data diving to ask some questions of the data. If there's a way that we can use that data going forward to prevent what policies, procedures, communication that has been discussed to prevent misconduct. I don't know if that's something that the staff has looked at, if that's a possibility. Is that a good
Yes.
explanation of my
Haley
question?
Superintendent Horn, Member Haney, that has absolutely been the focus for many years of the enforcement action staff. For example, we noticed that grooming was a concern. And so getting out the definition of grooming and what grooming looks like in practice was very supportive. And that's what's something that's been provided in training and has helped to prevent future harm of students as well. Working through what mandatory reporting looks like. So sometimes we get a lot of cases that are reported and they don't warrant disciplinary action, but getting that case in and having it reviewed by a professional investigator and getting some feedback even to the school district about that. I think that as well, it improves the prevention of harm and the misconduct too. And so I'll let Executive Ross probably add something much more full of wisdom there.
No, excellent job, Jessica. President Haley, Superintendent Horn, Member Haney. So I want to contextualize first and then answer the question. So the board is not historically a training body, right? That's something that the department does expertly. And so we actually don't have any staff dedicated to trainings. All of our investigative unit, it's broken up to an enforcement actions team, our investigative unit, and then our work with the Attorney General's office. However, we prioritize and have always found that's important. So we've used time and resources to partner with other organizations to build the resources page. Our chief investigator and our enforcement director, Dave Spellich and Garnett Burns, go out and do trainings at like high leverage conferences. And then we are devoting time to the building of resources. And ultimately, what we are working towards is leveraging sort of the cross authority of the board, where the board has a hand in educator preparation as well. So we are leveraging those relationships to have our staff, and we're sort of working to arrange this down the road, but have our staff be able to go in and train ed prep candidates, have resources. Shannon from our team is going to be developing a series of videos, have resources that we share with those ed prep programs and say, it is the expectation of the board that all of your educators watch this ethics training, watch this training on grooming, watch this training on mandatory reporting. So we would absolutely love to leverage even more of that, even to the point where we've had a budget ask in for increased funding to hire an FTE who would be devoted fully to training and resource development, either at the board or at the department. And so it is something we very much, for just as an example, we never had that resource page. And over the last few years, the investigative unit, Jessica, working with Jessica and Bruce have built that. And one of the things I'm particularly proud of on that page is if you look at it, there are state and national partners in there. So anytime one of our state stakeholder groups has, for example, Arizona Educators Association, they have a robust series of trainings. We go to them and we say, hey, let us post those. Let us be another hub for those. We worked with the Frank and Nancy Sinatra Fight Child Abuse Center. So it's funny because it's a passion for us, but unfortunately it's a passion we don't have funding for. So we really do our best on top of a huge investigative load and caseload to work in those spaces. But as an example, one of the pieces of data that have emerged over the last couple of years, and Jessica talked about it today, is the educators with certificates that require the least amount of training. So emergency certs, subject matter experts, those folks have a higher percentage of incidents. And so that's an important piece of data that we've shared with educator prep programs to say, you know, and with districts to say, if you are going to hire somebody on an emergency cert, you are absolutely beholden to do an ethics training with them. And that is, you know, to the benefit of you, to your children. And so that's kind of an area we're moving forward and looking at how the full authority of the board, the full scope of the board's work could leverage that work even more.
Wonderful. Thank you, Sean. Thank you, Jessica, for those responses. Again, I echo what I said earlier, and that is that there's great value in the data to be able to inform school districts and others that are working with professional educators to help them understand where those challenges are, where those gaps are, where those needs are, to prevent. So thank you.
Any other questions from members of the board or comments? Executive Director Ross.
President Haley, Superintendent Horn, members of the board. If the board will just bear with me, our investigative unit and enforcement action team, they're the real unsung heroes of our staff. You all get to see the great work that Jessica and Melissa and Shannon and Rico and Sandy and all of us do each day, but you don't get to interact as much with them. Our enforcement action team is led by Garnett Burns. Dawn and Stephanie help make up that. I think Dawn was in the room. Dawn and Stephanie help make up that team. They do everything to coordinate cases for PPAC, negotiated surrenders, revocations. It's a Herculean amount of work for 3 people. Our investigative team is led by Chief Dave Spelich. Scott Reuter, Mitch Jurgensen are our leads. And then we have Scotty, Steve, Anita, Carrie, Ben, and Dave as our investigators, all former law enforcement, many of them former military as well. Wendy and Don oversee fingerprint clearance card, hundreds, thousands a year of fingerprint clearance cards. Huge shout out to our 3 PPACs who are volunteers who come and hold those hearings of their own time. And then I would be remiss if I didn't mention the great partnership we have with the Attorney General's office. Joe is our primary attorney, and he's amazing. He leads a great team with Sierra, who I think is here as well, Brendan and Ben. And so the totality of the work, the totality of the staff, it is really incredible. These are all people who have dedicated their lives to protecting children, even before coming to the board. I mean, again, they're all former law enforcement. And I count myself very fortunate every day to walk into an office that is filled with people who have dedicated their lives to good. So sorry, I know I took a little bit of time, but there really are the unsung heroes of this team. And I would be remiss to not mention them by name.
Thank you, Executive Director Ross. Any other comments from the board? Well, thank you again, Jessica, for highlighting the incredible work of the PPAC. I know that we've updated some materials in prior years. On online communication, and we've heard a number of times from Garnett and Dave. So I just commend the entire team and the countless hours. I mean, we've just made an adjustment, I believe, on how we hear those PPAC cases, so they move a little quicker. Some of them are going on for a full day, sometimes I think even longer. But we just are incredibly grateful to the men and women that are committed to making sure our schools are safe, yeah. So with that, thank you. We're going to move on to how are we doing on time? Do folks need a quick break, or should we go to the next item? Okay, we're going to go to the next item. We're going to move on to item 4D, as in David. This is a discussion, possible action to provide guidance to the A through F technical advisory committees to investigate and report on possible changes to the acceleration readiness indicator of the A through F summative system. So with that, Executive Director Ross.
President Haley, Superintendent Horn, members of the board. This is a very familiar item to the board. We have held 6 in-depth study sessions as part of the A through F revision process the board undertook well over a year ago. Each of those study sessions has covered one or more of the primary indicators that makes up the summative letter grade for the school accountability system. We most recently completed the study session on acceleration readiness, which is used in K-8 schools for their letter grades. And so as we do after each study session, board staff worked with department staff and the board to put together prompts to send to the technical advisory committees to help guide their investigation and their modeling. The technical advisory committees, and huge shout out to them. They are also volunteers who devote their time, effort, and expertise to the work of the board. They are well within this process, and they've sent some recommendations up, more are coming. But this would be the last batch related to the most recent study session. So I stand by if you have any questions.
Any questions from members of the board? I know that our last study session was very technical in nature. Any comments? I know, Dr. Hagerman, do you have a comment or question?
Just more a comment. I just continue to appreciate Sean Smith and everyone from ADE and their work to help us kind of get the bits and pieces put together so we can get these indicator scores up and going.
Any other comments or questions? Okay, well, in that case, what I'd like to do is I'd like to have a motion that the board take action to provide guidance to the A through F technical advisory committees to investigate and report on the possible changes to the acceleration readiness indicator of the A through F summative system. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
I'll go. Member Haney is the first, and the
And I'll take second.
is Dr. Hagerman. Great, thank you. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Seeing none, that the motion carries. Thanks. All right, we'll move on to item 4E. This is a presentation discussion regarding the State Board response to the Auditor General's performance audit of the A through F accountability system.
President Haley, Superintendent Horn, members of the board. The audit has been mentioned a couple times in this meeting, and so we wanted to make sure to have an item to discuss it publicly, especially with the audit report having been published last Friday. So I'm going to do a little overview of the process and then talk about some of the findings and then how those findings align with the work already being done by the department and the board. So just for those who may be unaware, the Auditor General's Office was conducting a performance audit of the Department of Education. That's a regular event. Performance audits occur, I believe, every 10 years for large programs. And so as part of that audit, they were auditing the A through F school accountability system. So obviously the audit would then also involve the state board, who has oversight over that system. As far as the timeline goes, the board was first made aware of the audit end of December, but really early January of this year. We met with staff from the Auditor General's Office over the course of about 6 months. In those early meetings, the Auditor General's Office reported some of what they were finding verbally. They couldn't share anything in writing until the draft report was ready. Hearing what they shared verbally, board and department staff would provide responses, and to discuss those findings, to help clarify them, to help at times contradict them if we disagreed. We worked together with that office. They came to the May board meeting to present the draft report to the board in executive session. And then the draft report was sent to the board that same week. The board had 11 days, and the department each had 11 days to respond, provided a response, met with the Auditor General's Office one more time, and then had 5 days to provide a response. As Superintendent Horn mentioned, the department and the board provided a combined response. And then the audit report was published Friday, allowing us to hold this item today. We were refreshing the page on Friday. Jessica, Bruce, and I kept messaging each other. Did you see it yet? Did you see it yet? So it's been a lot of the work of this year has been towards this audit. We very much appreciate the time of the Auditor General's Office and staff in working with us towards this goal. So one of the things that emerged from the audit are some really key affirmations of the work of the department and the board. So I'd like to open kind of with these. In the report, it is acknowledged that the board built the A through F system called for in state statute back in 2016-17. Senate Bill I'm blanking on the number. That's okay. There was a Senate bill that called for a significant change to the system. The board at the time worked with stakeholders, hundreds of hours of meetings, town halls, listening tours, and then built that system, which since that time has been maintained and revised and refined by the technical advisory committees, the board, and the department. One of the other affirmations in the report is that the design of the Arizona A through F system mirrors the design of systems in most states across the country. That makes sense. Most state accountability systems are based in large part on the Every Student Succeeds Act. So they sort of at times will mirror the structure of the federal system, though not always the same purpose or intent. One other affirmation that came out of the report was that the A through F cut scores established by the board are in the middle range of cut scores across the country. Now, cut scores are still definitely something the board is excited to look at and review, and potentially, this is obviously I'll just say potentially because I'm not a board member, potentially revise. But the report did say that the current scores are in the middle range. And then the board had followed the technical advisory committee meetings had sort of gone between the board and the department over the years, and I'll explain that in more detail in a minute. But when under the purview of the board, they have met open meeting law. And then the one in bold is the one I'm going to emphasize the most, which is the issues and suggestions put forward in the audit report for changes to the A through F accountability system are being addressed by the board's comprehensive, transparent, and methodical revision system process that began well over a year ago. So really wonderful news, honestly, that the audit supports the work that the board has been progressing towards for quite a while now. I'm just going to cover a couple of the key findings of the report. One of the elements in the report was that the board and ADE need to provide letter grades for system indicators. This is true. This has been in statute for a few years. The board and the department, acknowledge we've not been in full compliance with this. The department does release school report cards every year that contains much of this data. But there's some context actually as to why indicator scoring has not been provided as of yet. So the current letter grade system was a result of legislation that passed in 2016. Letter grades were issued for the first time in 2017. And then we had for the 2016-17 school year, so in 2018. So we only had 2 years of letter grades prior to COVID hitting. Upon the advent of the COVID pandemic, the decision was made at the board, department, at every level, legislative, gubernatorial, to postpone letter grades. So letter grades were not released for the 2019-2020 school year. And then 2020-21, the letter grades just mimicked the pre-COVID year, but they didn't count towards, say, like school improvement or some of those legislative requirements. So really, we were without letter grades for 2 years during the pandemic. And then coming out of the pandemic, really needed 3 years of, you need trend data, and trend data is 3 years. So we needed 3 years of data to get a real handle on where the system is, where it was, its strengths lie, and where there was some need for revision. And so that was something that at the prompting of Superintendent Horn, the board, as President Haley mentioned early in her report, and the technical advisory committees, each of those groups agreed, it's really time to dive into the system and look and see what's happening, and let's start working towards indicator scoring. The TACs started working towards indicator scoring and ran into an issue, and this issue is documented in a letter the chair of the technical advisory committee, Superintendent Sean Rickert, who many of the board know well. We actually honored Superintendent Rickert a couple of meetings ago for his time on the TACs. He sent a letter to the board saying, we are trying to build indicator scoring, but the truth is this is a system that was designed as a whole, and in going from whole to part, we're finding issues that we hadn't seen before in the summative system. We believe addressing those are more vital and exigent and will actually set up indicator scoring more effectively. So the TACs pivoted to looking at the system as a whole. And as part of that, the revision process we are currently in the midst of emerged. So again, as a reminder, we've held 6 study sessions. All of those are live streamed and archived on our YouTube channel, so those can be viewed anytime. The board has had several votes. In fact, I think you've averaged at least 1 vote a month going back to October towards this revision process. And then the technical advisory committees have also averaged about 1 to 2 votes a meeting to get a recommendation. So the process is moving along well. And the result of this revision process will be the advent of a very effective, very thoughtful and methodical indicator scoring for the next letter grade release. So we're moving very rapidly towards that. Again, the finding is justifiable out of compliance, but we're moving very quickly towards that. And then this is just a reminder of those indicators. We've held study sessions for each. And then my favorite visual analogy, because I'm old, is the radio dial analogy that I've given each of you many times, which is upon the completion of this process for the first time ever, the board will have the ability to make every indicator criterion referenced versus norm referenced, as some currently are, and then to set cut scores both at the indicator level and summative level, and to set those cut scores as the board sees fit, as ambitiously as the board sees fit, based on data. And that's something Sean Smith has talked to you all about in several meetings. So again, really exciting for what's coming the board's way, and giving you all a mechanism by which to affect fine and large change. One of the other findings from the report was that the board should enhance public reporting to provide greater differentiation amongst schools and more clearly communicate the differentiation in performance. Again, that's part of the revision process. As part of the revision process, again, we are working towards the development and implementation of indicator scoring. Indicator scoring will provide so much more rich and effective data to schools. So now if I'm school Y and I get a B overall, I know I have a B, but I can now, I'll be able to look at my indicators and say, hey, I'm doing really well in growth and in college and career readiness, but I need to get my proficiency levels and my English language learners. That needs to be a big focus for me moving into the next year. So that'll give schools, the public, policymakers a lot more information. And then as part of the comprehensive revision process, we will also have the board revisit the definitions for letter grades as well. And then this is just a reminder of the current weights in the system, K-8 and 9-12. We're not really focusing on alternative schools at the moment. The audit was focused only on traditional schools. But I included this slide because we will be treating this year's retreat in August. I'll put retreat in air quotes because it's in the boardroom. And so, but it's still a treat to be together. This year's retreat will focus largely on letter grades, and in fact will be a large discussion for you all to talk about weights in the system and any potential changes you may see. So that discussion is coming, which is really exciting. And then one of the findings was, again, about open meeting law. I just wanted to provide a little context for this. The technical advisory committees have been meeting for years. The board oversaw those meetings from 2016 to 2018. And when the board oversaw those meetings, they followed open meeting law. At one point, ADE took the meetings over from 2018 to 2023. And in talking to the folks who were around at that time, this predates my time and Sean Smith's time at the department, the decision was really more about, well, the first batch of years were about creating the system. Now we're in a maintenance phase, so it makes more sense for ADE since they have the data to sort of lead that portion. But there was also some confusion in the language of statute, and the report acknowledges that as well. So those meetings weren't open. But in coming to 2023, Superintendent Horn came into office when our staff stepped in 23. We met with the board, we met with the department. We really thought it's more appropriate to have those meetings at the board, and then because indicator scoring was going to be a big topic, and that's more of a creation piece. And so we moved those meetings back, and every meeting overseen by the board has always met open meeting law. So just to give a little more context. And then really the key takeaway is that this audit, the changes posited in the audit, the changes called for or recommended in the audit, all align with the comprehensive, methodical, and transparent revision process the board began well over a year ago. So It's exciting to have the work of the board supported in large part by this report. But I'm also going to provide, pat the board and the department on the back a little bit, because this process began well before this audit. And so, the department, the board, the tax all saw the need for revision and have worked towards this through this process. And it's nice to have that process validated in this audit. So just for some next steps, the board and the department and the tax will continue through the 8th ref revision process, again, with a goal of finalizing by this fall or winter. The board will then work with the department to implement the revised system. And then just for those of you who've not been through an audit before, there is always a 6-month, 1-year, and 3-year update to the Auditor General's office. So we will provide those as well. And with that, happy to take any questions.
Are there any questions from members of the board? Dr. Hagerman.
Sean, can you just talk us through the next steps? I know our retreat, we're going to talk about weights. I believe we have one more study session at least. Let's just talk it through, and then just imagine. I just want to try to get the community as much, and kind of like where you were with the next steps, that last slide. Can I go back there and just talk us through it again? I just want to make sure I understand.
President Haley, Superintendent Horn, Vice President Hagerman, absolutely. So we will hold one more indicator-related study session. We are currently working with Sean Smith and his team. Just for some context, that there's been some folks, some turnover on that team. So Sean's been working solo on a lot of things, and we ask a lot of Sean. So very thankful for him. He's amazing. But we're working to putting one more study session together late June, early July on bonus points. There is a recommendation in the Auditor General's report for the removal of bonus points. So that'll be something that'll be discussed. And then the next steps will address, will leverage where the changes potentially will come. We will talk about cut score setting at the indicator level. We will talk about weights of the summative system and cut score setting for the summative system. So obviously those are the fulcrum decision points. Those are the points that will have the biggest impact. And as we work with Sean Smith and his team at the department, for what we are asking him to do, for lack of a better term, is to bring you all a poo-poo platter of choices, and to say to you, okay, if you wanted X, Y, and Z, here's what the data says would happen. If you wanted X and Z but not Y, here's what would happen. And to really give the board options and for consideration. And then one other piece I just want to really emphasize is we have worked really hard to make this process transparent for the public, for policymakers, and for the field. So we do share, and as Dr. Clay can attest, after every study session, we send those links out to all the county superintendents. We send them out to all of the education stakeholder groups. We share them largely with the field, inviting feedback. And I'm happy to say, at the last meeting in May, we had quite a bit of written comment in support of this process about how methodical, thoughtful, and transparent it has been. So, that's exciting to see sort of different elements of the educational community really focused on how effective the process has been. And we are again, to quote my old college professor, pert near results and you all voting on those changes. So Dr. Hagerman, does that help?
That helps. One more question. I don't know how we're thinking about modeling once we get all the data, with the current year data to kind of see how it would work out, or when we think about that transparency and kind of looking forward before it becomes this is how we do business. Is there any thoughts that you're having or Sean Smith's having related to that kind of steps?
President Haley, Superintendent Horn, Vice President Hagerman. Yeah, the board back in March, I believe, Jessica, the capital M methodology vote.
Yep.
Yeah. The board did vote in March on a large framework for the methodology for the revision. And that framework was that the department, Sean's team, would bring to the tax and to the board where the current cut score is set for each indicator, where trend data shows the cut score should be set, and then the board, the board could set something even beyond that, and how that would impact letter grades and what an appropriate time frame for that would be. So really, that's the model we'll be using when we bring you that platter of options, which is current score, trend data score, and then possible scores, and how that would impact letter grades overall. Now that's going to get tricky data-wise because there are so many moving parts in the system, but it is, we've talked to Sean Smith about it, and so again, bringing you all, the mechanism is in place, just bringing you all those data possibilities.
Cool. So looking forward to August.
Yes, yes.
Thank you.
Dr. Clay.
Good morning again. I have a comment that's I think is very, very important. Many of the issues that were found by the AG were addressed way prior to the audit. And if you look at it with the glass halfway full, that means that the board, the Department of Education, and AG were really on the same page. Okay, they're seeing things the same way. So I applaud the state board and the Department of Education for being proactive in a lot of these issues before it was even addressed by the AG. So hats off to both organizations. Thank you.
Superintendent Horn.
Yes, that was part of our rebuttal, that we had started the process of revising the system long before the Auditor General or anyone in her office had even read anything.
Any other comments or questions from members of the board? Well, in that case, Executive Director Ross, I'm really grateful to the entire team. I know there were many individuals that were working around the clock over the last 6 months, both when we were cued in about the investigation and two, when we were read in with some of the findings, and appreciated just the thoroughness of the state board in providing the Auditor General's office with the information that they need to be able to fully comprehend and understand what was before the board and the board's task and responsibility. Also, many thanks to the department and their hard work. It is a collaborative endeavor. And so I'm grateful that a number of the questions that board members have been raising for a number of years, we began this thorough process when it became, I think, to light that the indicator scoring was not going to be able to be possible. We took it upon ourselves to move forward. I think we, as a board and the tax and the department, had some assumptions that we would be able to come through with the indicator scoring over a year ago. But it became to light just the A through F letter grade system that we have was so intertwined that we couldn't be successful. So I'm grateful that we're in the midst of this. I'm glad that some of the Auditor General's findings were in alignment with what we were already doing. And I'm looking forward to the work of the board as we continue to move forward on the A through F accountability system so that it is more transparent and families have a deeper understanding of what the NA means and what an F means. So, and the steps that can be done and taken by our schools to improve educational outcomes for our kids. So with that, I think great. I don't think there's any action items that we need to take, and we can move on to item F.
Is that discipline?
We already did discipline. All right, with that, Executive or Policy Director Yanez, we would like to move to item 4F.
All right, awesome. President Haley, Vice President Hagerman online, and Superintendent Horn. Today I'm here to provide a just kind of recap on the 2026 legislative session as the 57th legislature second regular session sine died on June 13th, 2026, after they had passed the annual state budget on June 11th. I forgot I have control over this PowerPoint. You can go to the next slide. There we go. I always kind of do this at the end of the year. I put in just some session statistics here. So there were 2,030 bills introduced by the legislature this year. 142 of those were signed into law by the governor's office, and 41 measures or resolutions were transmitted to the Secretary of State's office. So the annual state budget this year was $18.3 billion. As I had mentioned, signed on June 13th. The K-12 related provisions are generally pretty consistent with what we saw in the prior year for fiscal year 26. So we still have continued one-time funding priorities around the building renewal grants of $183 million, which is the largest one-time continuing expense for K-12, as well as an additional, or not additional, but just a state aid supplement that will be divvied up proportionally among school districts. And then we also have continuations of additional assistance supplementals, school meal copays, Group B weights for the free and reduced priced lunch students in schools. That has also been included in prior annual budgets. I think the big note this year that is different from the prior year is that both the department and the board took 2.5% lump sum reductions to our operating budgets. This will impact some of our work, and Sean had mentioned that in one of the prior presentations as well. So just for board members' awareness and just some recent history was in fiscal year 25, so two fiscal budgets ago, the board's operating budget was cut by $111,000. So over the course of the past 3 fiscal years, our operating budget has been reduced by $192,000. There has been, I think, on some of the bigger ticket discussions around the legislature, there was not negotiated agreements around additional monies that are available through the state land trust dollars, where there were a few ideas that were being considered this year around what was previously Prop 123, which expired last year. So school districts will not be, and charters will not be losing money due to that expiration, though, because the monies that were previously allocated through the state land trust are now allocated through the general fund. And that will continue to be a requirement along with the formula spending that schools received this year, which was 2% increases. And then before I get into just some of the next steps, after the budget was passed, there were a few items that were transmitted to the Secretary of State's office the day after the budget was passed on June 13th. So one of which was HCR 2040, which relates to some prohibitions around labor organizations for teacher unions, although there's some discussion around whether or not that may affect other labor organizations as well. That is HCR 2040. And then one of the larger ones for K-12 as well is SCR 1032 was passed by the legislature and transmitted to the Secretary of State, which would require school districts to build towards spending 60% of their operational budgets on direct instructional expenses as defined by the Auditor General's office. And it requires a 0.5% increase on an annual basis. And then the last measure was HCR 2048, which would be a constitutional amendment that would restrict ballot measures and initiatives or the legislature in statute from prohibiting the state from confiscating scholarship account monies from eligible students in military families that want to use monies for tuition and fees at post-secondary universities and institutions. And then the key part of this one as well is that it voids any bill or measure that is approved by the voters after November 1st in 2026, which there is also another voter measure that is awaiting verification on July 2nd as to whether or not it received the amount of voter initiative signatures required to meet the ballot. And there's questions around whether or not that initiative would be voided if this one should also pass with it. That other one is currently filed with the Secretary of State's office, and it would introduce a couple regulatory responsibilities on the board as it relates to covering ESA qualified tutors in schools for disciplinary action, and then also would cover for additional requirements that mirror what we require in school districts and charter schools for fingerprint clearance card requirements, as well as puts in place some new definitions around educational items and what those would qualify as well as places an income cap on eligibility for ESA recipients. And then moving on towards what our next steps will look like. So the next 2 months is we're building towards our August retreat, which is traditional, as staff will be identifying plans for legislative revisions. There's been some changes, as Bethany had mentioned earlier, around statewide assessments. And so they're accommodating for that with the RFP. There's also some changes to a few other things that we can present in August as it relates to some fingerprint clearance card, temporary authorizations, some small tweak on some executive session law, and then also computer science proficiency state seal. And then as we get to August, what we traditionally look at is a discussion around those introductory discussions on the legislative priorities, which is embedded in the strategic agenda that we approve annually in December. And then between the direction that you give us in August and then our September, October meetings, board staff will convene and we'll, at your direction from the August retreat, engage with stakeholders, engage with the field to start planning out what next January's priorities will look like. And then in December, we'll meet to have the State Board of Education, at your guys' direction, vote to adopt the legislative priorities that you guys have identified for the upcoming January. So that is all I have today for our legislative update. I am open to any questions or feedback from board members.
Any questions from members of the board? Can't tell. Don't see any hands raised. Just thanks for the update. Thanks for the due diligence. We had a lot of twists and turns this legislative session. It was busy in those last days. You were probably up until 5 a.m. So thank you, Rico, since there was quite a lot at stake related to education. So I know that perhaps as we get ready for the August retreat and spend some time on the A through F, we'll certainly have probably some conversations related to that. Any other comments or questions from members of the board? No? All right. Well, thanks so much, Rico. I know it was a busy until the end. So many thanks. And also just gratitude to Dr. Hagerman and Dr. Clay. They, along with myself, serve on the policy committee, and we have our weekly meetings. And many thanks to Rico and to Sean and to Bruce for participating in those and the thoroughness by which you update us. So many thanks.
Thank you.
Okay. I think for everyone's health and wellness, we'll take a quick break. Let's reconvene at, say, 11:10. I think we'll get started in just a few minutes. Okay. Okay. I think, do we have a quorum? Just, can we take a quick check for those of us joining online with Dr. Cruz Rivera and Dr. Dr. Katniss, and promoting you, Jason, or elevating you in your academic prowess.
I've always wanted a doctorate, but it hasn't happened yet. Someday.
Perhaps honorary. Okay, I think we have quorum, so we're going to move to item 5. This is an call to the public. This is a time for the public to comment on items listed in educator discipline section of the agenda. Please note that the Arizona law prohibits board members from discussing or taking legal action on matters raised during the call to the public that are not on the current meeting agenda. Each speaker has 2 minutes to address the board during the 1-hour public comment period. Furthermore, speakers are not allowed to cede their time to another speaker, and personal attacks are not appropriate. With that, Deputy Director Duplanty, have we received any requests to speak?
President Haley, Superintendent Horn, and members, yes, we have. First up is Laurel Thompson, followed by Gerald Chavez, followed by Morgan Bigelow. Laurel? You're up.
Hello. Thank you for having me today. I have prepared many speeches. The last one I didn't print, the other one's in paper, but I was very moved by the presentation of discipline. And I was thinking how I kind of felt on the behind the 8 ball in all of this, the situation. And I was really encouraged that 98% of educators that have higher degrees and do the professional development like I have a master's degree in special education. I've been in special education for 27 years of my life. And I was very encouraged that you all celebrated that 98% of people in my position don't have any disciplinary action. I need to stay in that 98%. This has been a 4-year cloud over my head. It's been terrible for me and for my family. I can't find any of these speeches that I created, so maybe that's a sign that I should just speak from my heart. After my master's degree, I also did a 3-year Begin program for new teachers. I have a stack of professional development. And I'm taking a class at ABA right now because I thought it was interesting. It actually is really interesting. And I really enjoyed being here today because it was super interesting because I love to learn. That's what I do. So let me say something that I had planned. When concerns were raised, I did cooperate in every way. I answered every question, and I answered honestly. The false allegations have cost me employment opportunities and a lot of other things. But I do ask you, respectfully ask you, to consider my 3 decades in education, for taking care of the most vulnerable students that I love to do. And I've already paid a very heavy price.
Thank you so much.
For 4 years, and losing my certificate would be a hardship to myself and my family.
Thank you for taking the time.
Thank you.
President Haley, Superintendent Horn, members of the board. Next up is Gerald Chavez, followed by Morgan Bigelow, followed by Mercedes Thompson. Gerald?
Good morning, members of the board. My name is Gerald Chavez. I just want to thank you for this time today. I'm a retired law enforcement detective and a former assistant coach at Cesar Chavez High School. I coached there for 13 years, and I was a community assistant there for 3 years. During this time, I've received both Coach and Employee of the Year while employed at Phoenix Union. I stand in front of you today understanding that you have a tough job to do and hard decisions to make. But I'm asking you to make your decision based on facts. I have maintained over the past 3 years of this investigation that the accusations I'm accused of are grossly false with regards to my character and care of student athletes. I am asking the committee to help me to understand how an investigation that was conducted by the Phoenix Union administration was withdrawn and allegations of wrongdoing on my behalf. But yet 3 years later, I'm standing in front of you awaiting discipline for being present on a dock while my kids swam, never hearing any signs of distress. With regards to providing first aid, I did the best of my ability and of my knowledge due to the fact that none of our vehicles were provided with any first aid kits. This investigation revealed 6 coaches were on that dock that day, all having equal responsibility. I've heard some great things about your investigation detail. As a former investigator, I find it hard to believe that 3 of the other coaches were never investigated by Phoenix Union or by the Department of Education. One is currently a coach and still working. I thank you for your time. And this past 3 years have been very difficult for me since I was the one that truly had a relationship with this young man. Thank you.
President Haley, Superintendent Horn, members of the board. Next up is Morgan Bigelow, followed by Mercedes Thompson.
Good morning, Morgan Bigelow on behalf of Sylvia Ojeda. I respectfully request that the board deny the PPAC's recommendation to suspend Ms. Ojeda's teaching certificate, or in the alternative, order a new hearing. The state failed to meet its burden of proving by a preponderance of the evidence that Ms. Ojeda engaged in conduct discrediting the teaching profession. The incident arose during an educational field trip to Walmart designed to teach special education students real-life lessons, where at checkout, a number of items were inadvertently not scanned. Ms. Ojeda was questioned and cited by the police, but this was immediately dismissed in court. The PPAC members, in commenting on their votes, improperly discredited Ms. Ojeda's case on 2 grounds. First, the committee faulted Ms. Ojeda for lacking a letter of recommendation from her current principal, which I now have in my hand right here. And second, the committee found Ms. Ojeda's explanation that she was experiencing severe mental distress from fulfilling an abusive relationship the night before the incident to be unpersuasive due to a lack of documentation. Both of these examples show that the burden was improperly shifted to Ms. Ojeda to prove that discipline should be avoided, rather than maintained by the state to prove that discipline was appropriate. As such, we request the board to deny the suspension recommendation or order a new hearing consistent with due process. And finally, I'd like to end with a quote from her current principal for the 2025 to 2026 school year. He wrote, quote, "Suspending her teaching license would result in a significant loss for the students she would not be able to serve in the future. Many students rely on the relationships, advocacy, expertise, and support she provides on a daily basis. Removing her from the classroom would not only impact her professionally, but would also have real and lasting consequences for students who benefit from her commitment, care, and specialized skills." He then later concludes, quote, "I am confident that Ms. Ojeda will continue to be a valuable asset to the profession and a positive influence in the lives of the students she serves." Thank you.
President Haley, Superintendent Horn, members of the board. Last up is Mercedes Thompson, who doesn't appear to be online. So that concludes this call to the public.
Okay. We will now move to item 6. The consent agenda for the enforcement actions will be taken in a single motion. Are there any items from the consent agenda for the enforcement actions that a board member would like to pull and discuss? Seeing none, then I would like to take a motion. Do I have a motion to approve items 6A1 through 6A11, 6B1 through 6B2, 6C1, 6D1, 6D3 through 6D11, 6E1, and 6F1?
So moved.
Dr. Hagerman makes a motion. Do I have a second?
Second.
Member Haney seconds. All in favor say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. We'll now move to item 7. This is the general session for the certificate enforcement actions that will be taken in a single motion. Are there any items from the general session for enforcement actions that a board member would like to pull and discuss?
I had a statement.
Superintendent Horn.
Yes. I received a communication from an old friend for whom I have great respect on behalf of Mr. Chavez. And since I believe that when we act on discipline cases, it's a quasi-judicial proceeding, my instinct was to recuse myself. I checked with the executive director and the assistant attorney general to get their advice, and they agreed with me that that would be the proper thing to do. So I will recuse myself from item 7B3, and if it's one motion, then I'll have to recuse myself from the whole motion.
Do we have any additional questions or comments for item 7 or items to pull? Seeing there are none, then we will, superintendent will recuse himself from this particular item, and we'll take the full motion in a single vote. So do I have a motion to approve items 7A1 through 7A6, 7B1 through 7B6, 7B8, 7C1, and 7C2?
So moved.
Dr. Hagerman makes a motion. Do I have a second?
Second.
Member Catney seconds. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? None. Motion carries. With that, we move to item 8, Executive Director Ross.
President Haley, Superintendent Horn, members of the board, thank you for an efficient and effective meeting. Thank you for all the time that you have given this calendar and fiscal year to the great work of the board. Just a reminder, there is no board meeting in July. So our next board meeting will be Monday, August 24th. And then our retreat, which will also be in the boardroom, will be Tuesday, August 25th. Just thank you again. Thanks to the team again for all of their great work.
With that, many thanks to all the team members and the hard work in getting ready for this meeting, and looking forward to August. It'll be hot, but that is okay. With that, this meeting concludes at 11:26 a.m. Thank you.